Last lesson we got through the greeting, which was verses 1 through 4 of Titus. Basically, it just said that this was a letter from Paul to Titus, and it lent Titus some of Paul's authority. Today, we're going to see why Titus would need authority to do his task. In verse 5, Paul jumps right into Titus's assigned task, his mission. I left you on the island of Crete so you could complete our work there and appoint elders in each town as I instructed you. So we find out that previously Titus and Paul had been working together here on Crete, but then Paul sailed away leaving Titus there. Let's look at that verse again. I left you on the island of Crete so you could complete our work there and appoint elders in each town as I instructed you. Paul seems to be using this letter to remind Titus of the tasks that he had given him in person. Those two tasks were, 1, to complete our work there, and 2, appoint elders in every town. Their work was establishing a healthy, self-sustaining church on the island of Crete. Their work's not finished because the people don't have enough training yet to defend themselves from the false teachers that were going around spreading confusion and a false gospel. So the church is going to need leadership to train people in the true gospel and refute false teachings. This takes us to the second part of Titus's task, appoint elders in every town. Now, I have to take a brief side note and explain what an elder is, because so many churches have different ideas about it. There are 3 different terms used in the New Testament for leadership offices in the church. That doesn't mean they're the only offices, but I just want to focus on the main 3 church leadership positions in the New Testament. Overseers, elders, and shepherds or pastors. 1 Peter 5, 1 and 2 uses all 3 of these terms. I exhort the elders among you, shepherd God's flock among you, not overseeing out of compulsion, but willingly, as God would have you, not out of greed for money, but eagerly. Notice that you've got elders who are shepherding or pastoring and overseeing. Now, whether these are separate offices or different names for the same office, either way, there's definitely considerable overlap. These terms are also used in this overlapping way in Acts chapter 20. So the point is that this fledgling group of churches needs leadership, and Paul had assigned Titus to the task of appointing these leadership positions. And he reminds him of his assignment not so much because Timothy may have forgotten, but so that he'll have proof that he, Titus, has authority to choose the leaders of all the churches on Crete. Now, why was it so important for Titus to have proof that it was his job to appoint the church leaders? There's 2 reasons. 1, because he's young. 2, because there was a group in the church who had already asserted themselves as leaders in the church. They were teaching, which is naturally connected to leadership, and they were getting paid. Look at verse 11. It is necessary to silence them. They are ruining entire households by teaching what they shouldn't in order to get money dishonestly. So they're ruining entire households, they're teaching, they're getting paid, they're self-appointed, and worst of all, they're teaching a false gospel. Their false gospel is that you're saved by what Jesus did for you and by following Jewish laws. Anytime you add something to Jesus' work on the cross, as though what he did wasn't quite enough, you've got a false gospel. And we have to watch out for that today, because it's very easy to confuse the outward form with the inward substance. A Christian talks like this and dresses like this and goes to church this often, and that's what makes you a Christian. That is a false gospel. It's easy to take a biblical command and turn it into a qualification for salvation. It happens in our day. It happened in Isaiah's day with the empty rituals. It happened in Jesus' day with the Pharisees. And it was happening in the early church here on Crete in Titus's day with this circumcision group. They said salvation was by the cross and by obeying Old Testament laws. So Titus now has to come in and shut these guys up and appoint new leaders. There will obviously be opposition to this. So Paul's using this letter to affirm Titus's authority to do this. And it goes farther than that. The men that Titus appoints will also need evidence of their legitimacy and authority. Think about it. If Titus were to appoint leaders in every town on Crete and let everyone know that the circumcision group was wrong, there would be nothing they could do because everyone knew that Titus was essentially speaking for Paul, who had been handpicked by Jesus himself. If that happened, and then Titus sailed away, which he would in less than a year, chapter 3 says, after Titus is gone, those guys who were humiliated, how are they going to feel about these new leaders? Some may have truly repented of their error and their sinful ways, but some undoubtedly were hardened, bitter, and resentful. Once Titus is gone, they can begin talking to people privately, building a following within the church. This happens all the time in churches today, doesn't it? Hey, don't you think the pastor should have done the other thing? I know. And I think he's wrong about this. Look at this verse here. Pretty soon, you've got a little faction inside the church, a little division. That's why the final command in this letter, the last command before the closing section, is about people who stir up division. It says they only get 2 warnings. 3 strikes and they're shut out of fellowship with the church. It seems harsh, but division is a cancer in the church. And people who sow seeds of division, I don't know. I don't like the way the leaders did that. I think they should have done this. People who sow seeds of division like that, God takes that very seriously. This book says that those people need to be silenced. And if they won't be silenced after 2 warnings, they need to be out of the church. So this letter is going to guard the newly appointed leaders in every little town on Crete. It's going to guard them against little factions in their church rising up against them. This letter will guard them in 2 ways. One, they can say, hey, look, everyone knows I was appointed by Titus when he was here. And look at this letter from Paul, this letter that has the authority of Almighty God. It says that Titus was supposed to select the leader for this church in this town. Not your little group of followers. They're not the ones who are supposed to select a leader. Titus did, and he appointed me. So that's one way this letter would help guard against rival leaders in the church. But secondly, right after Paul states Titus's assignment to appoint leaders, he gives a big list of the qualifications for leaders. This is great for several reasons. The Christians will know who to follow if there are 2 rival leaders in the church. Don't listen to that guy. He cheats on his wife, and he's got a nasty temper, and he's arrogant. And those are 3 of the qualifications for a church leader. It says so right here. Another one of the benefits of having this list of qualifications is that this list can be used for generations to come. The ones that were hand-selected by Titus, that's good for the church, but that can only last 1 generation. So Paul's not just sending a quick fix for their immediate problems. He's giving them the tools to structure a healthy, mature church that can grow and reproduce and still hold true to the gospel of Jesus Christ. So you can read this list of qualifications for a church leader in verses 6 through 9 of chapter 1. Each one on that list is worth pondering and asking the Lord to show you if you obey that or not. But I'll close by commenting on only one of them. In verse 8, love what is good. It seems so vague, and generic that we usually just skim over it. Yeah, love what is good, don't love what is evil, duh. I'm moving on to the next thing. But think about how often we subconsciously feel like this. Well, you're supposed to be generous, so I guess I should give this to so-and-so. That's not loving generosity, that's begrudging it. There's 3 tiers: not giving, giving because you're supposed to, and giving because you love to give. That's the kind of person who should be leading a church. And this can be applied to every biblical virtue. For example, sexual purity. You're supposed to be faithful to your wife, even in your heart. Well, that's better than looking at pornography, but that person doesn't love the goodness and beauty of fidelity and purity. Or serving others, laying down your rights for the whole body. Fine, I'll sing the songs I don't like. That's not loving goodness. Or kindness. Oh my goodness, I got trapped into a conversation with him and I couldn't get away because I had to be nice. We should love to be kind and give our attention and our time to the lonely. I could go on, but you get the idea. Don't only do what is good, love what is good.